time. We want to take time in consideration. So what we'll do, as I've already welcomed you, we'll go right to our sponsor. And for Pastor R. Kevin Matthews, we have Brother David Marshall, the chair of the Social Justice Ministry of the Shepherd's House International. Come on in.
My name is David Marshall, and I am chairman of the Social Justice Ministry at the Shepherd's House. And unfortunately, Pastor Kevin Matthews, he may not be able to make it today. He asked me to speak on his behalf and on behalf of the Shepherd's House family. And I can say that the Shepherd House understand the call. We understand the assignment. We understand that it is our responsibility to meet our God Kingdom responsibility in helping those in our community. And as a result, it's an honor for us to be able to sponsor this event. It's in line with all the things that we would like to do to impact our community and also help our elected officials. Thank you.
Brother BJ Page from our Return Citizen Affairs Division will come up now.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So they say don't give preachers and motivational speakers the mic, and I'm not a preacher as of yet. I first want to just thank everyone for being here. These are important times for us, and we know that this mission that we're on is important. So I'm going to get straight to it. The Concerning Citizens Affairs Division was coordinated for the strategies and what I say, everything that embodies returning citizens. I often say that we are the office and division that is the air traffic control for everything that embodies our returning citizens. And with that being the air traffic control, our goal is to make sure that all of the returning citizens, the community-based organizations, the agencies, and the stakeholders, just like everybody in this room, are all in one location or one location that has all of the information that's needed. Being that we service so many people, it's a huge division. It's held with my fearless leader, Michael Williams, as the director, and myself as the liaison. So the two of us have a heavy lift, and we couldn't do it without you guys. So these are important times for us. I also want to say that it was birthed from years and years of Prince George's County leadership, you know, pushing the envelope, but not fully getting it engaged. And we were blessed and honored to have the Honorable Calvin Hawkins start what we call the Reentry Advisory Board. And through that Reentry Advisory Board, one of the takeaway suggestions that was pushed to the county level was to create our office. And we are, Prince George is proud to be able to have our county executive push and have us as the first ever Returning Citizens Affairs Division. So I just wanted to make sure that we heard that. Yeah, that's good. We've only been in this role, Mike and I, for a year and a half. In that year and a half, we pushed a lot of different initiatives, but a few things I want to really say that are big takeaways for me. Our playbook that we had, which has the reentry ecosystem, it shows everything that we put together up to this point, and it's adding on. We had the first ever Returning Citizens Summit. It was a huge deal where local and national leaders in our space came and talked about best practices and how we can integrate those things into Prince George's County. We had RPs that were put out for our population, which is still ongoing with even more, and some other supportive initiatives that we got going on. Once we had the pleasure of sitting with Reverend Folsom, we came about what were some solutions that we can kind of marry together. So I'm excited to say that this series from the Faith-Based Advisory Council, which I sit on, I'm excited about that. Along with the archive, which is the Returning Citizens Affairs Division, we said we need to create a conversation with all of our faith-based communities so we can either see what they're already doing or see what they want to do and how we can merge that together. So come this Brunch and Learn, we're able to say that this first series of 4, this first one is going to be around the conversation of IDs and vitals. A lot of our men and women on the other side of that wall, when they are transitioning home, all the things that they want to do, they really can't get started without that ID, birth certificate, and vitals. Sounds like something super simple, right? But it's not always the case when you transition at home. One thing I failed to say, I am also a returning citizen. I remember, the fortunate family support that I had that already put this in play for me. But I also know when I talk to some of our other men and women, they just don't have that support. So we can talk about how we're going to build that out in this first series. We're not really sure what the next 3 will be, but we want to leave this today, this Brunch and Learn, and say, hey, these are the next 3 topics that we should talk about. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. We know that Prince George's County, the faith-based community, is probably the biggest in the country, and we want to keep expounding on that through these Brunch and Learns like today. Thank y'all so much. I told y'all I'm a motivational speaker, so I got up here and I just started going. The real reason they got me up here was to introduce our moderators. All that other stuff was just off the cuff. I'm excited to introduce somebody who I hold dear to my heart, not only because he understands where people like me come from when it comes to mistakes that we have made, but I've also watched him through the years as a man behind the scenes to push initiatives to be able to get to the position that he is now in front of the scene to say, look, we are the change right here in Prince George's County, and we can do it through his leadership. The Honorable Calvin Hawkins is the Prince George's County Council member at large and is undeniably one of the most esteemed and beloved elected officials in District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia region. As a prominent figure in county politics, Hawkins is renowned for his exceptional ability to get things done. He has become the go-to person for resolving challenges and finding effective solutions. Beyond his impressive accomplishments, Hawkins has earned a reputation as a skilled mediator, yes, adept at bringing gaps between competing political interests. He is recognized for his talents in bringing people from diverse communities to differing viewpoints together and continuous through sensitive issues. Having grown up in the resilient Glass Matter community in Oxon Hill, Maryland, Calvin Hawkins developed a profound understanding of the value of public service. He learned from his wisdom and leadership from prominent figures such as District of Columbia's Mayor for Life, Murray Berg. Yes, sir, I love that. Councilmember Kevin Chambers, former Prince George's County Executives Wayne Curry, Jack Johnson, Bashawn Baker, and the current Prince George's County Executive, Madam Angela Alsobrooks. Additionally, he is seriously fortunate to benefit from the membership of the former Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford of the state of Maryland. Through his wealth of experience and support, Calvin Hawkins has carved out a remarkable career dedicated to service, community, and making positive impacts on the lives of those that he represents. I want to introduce to you the Honorable Calvin Hawkins.
I was given a specific time and I want to stay within that. When you have the experience that I've had, you know, words like freedom, sweet and wonderful to say, sings on my heartstrings all day and every day. There are words like liberty that almost make me want to cry. If you had known what I know, then you would know why. My friends, let me take you back to 1983. A young man, Pastor Davis, finished all the requirements for ROTC to become a second lieutenant in the United States Army, preparing to go and graduate from Bowie State, breaking barriers, single parent household, teenage parent. I had everything going for me. Today they call it crack. Back then it was called freebasing. I got caught up freebasing and one thing led to another. Start robbing banks and other places with guns. And I share with you, I'm one of those individuals that you run into will never make an excuse for my actions but take responsibility for them. It wasn't a system that did me wrong. I was an individual that did the system wrong, because as I look back on it today, I know so many individuals were looking up to me. Calvin Hawkins, coming from a single parent home, Calvin Hawkins graduating at the age of 17 with a daughter and falling in that category of a single parent, a teenage parent. For me, the judges didn't see a Calvin Hawkins that had potential, just made the first mistake in his life, major albeit, but said to me, no, you can't go to one of those places where you can reform and get out of it in a couple of years. You jumped across bank counters. You that one that some young person may never know you, but will know of your story and understand that crime doesn't pay. So after serving 3.5 years in the DC Department of Correctional System in Lawton, my then 7 years, she was 4 when I went in, my 7-year-old daughter came to see me with my mother, and as they were leaving and I was returning to get strip search, you take off everything. And my little 7-year-old daughter ran to me and grabbed my leg and said, she had just started school, and she said, Daddy, when are you coming home? When are you going to school with me? Yes, Pop, her grandfather, I love him going with me, but it's nothing like you, Daddy. You my father. When are you coming home? And if you all could imagine not having that answer for that 7-year-old child that didn't do anything wrong, but her father had committed some criminal acts that put him inside a prison. I went back to my cell and I said, Lord, I was playing with God probably up until that point, but that time I had to have a real conversation with him, because I was a man among men, but I was there when people were getting stabbed and not making it out of there. And so I said to my God, I said, got on my knees in my cell. Yes, there were Muslims around. Yes, there were others around, but I had to have that personal conversation that so many of you have had with them. And I had to say, God, Jesus, if you would just help me get out of this place, I would never miss another opportunity to serve my daughter and make all the activities that she was so need of me to do, because I was absent from her. And I got that chance after I had 45 years running wild, and that means I had 45 years, 45 years, 45 years, and any of you all know math. I had 135 years in Maryland. I had 6 to 18 years in DC, but thanks be to God that I only had to do 5 years and 9 months. And I say that to you because while we're here today, if I did not have the support system, then it was United States Judge Alex Williams took me on his wing, and I was going to Greater New Hope in DC with Melvin Brown. And so they made certain that I was able to get my identification, my birth certificate, and get a job. And if I didn't have that kind of accessibility and support, I dare not think where I would be today. But thanks to a daughter that believed her father should be going with her to her school activities, and a church that didn't believe my past transgressions was something to hold against my head, but became a bridge for me to become a better citizen. And I don't think I would be standing here before you if it weren't for the God of my weary years, the God of my silent tears. Someone that took a little wayward guy like me, a prodigal son, and said, there's more to you than a prison cell. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here in front of you. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to have this conversation with you. And I'm also grateful that you have a chance to hear from our panelists and ask them questions. We have Michael Williams. He's the director of the Prince George's County, Maryland Returning Citizens Affairs Division. And in this role, Michael is responsible for coordinating entry services throughout the county bringing both public and private entities together to create a re-entry ecosystem that best serves the needs of the county's returning citizens. Mike, instead of going into all of your past, I'm going to introduce the other one so we can engage in this conversation. And you don't mind, do you?
Not at all.
And we have Nina Ward, who serves as the Public Health Program Chief with the Prince George's County Health Department Behavioral Health Service Division. She leads a portfolio of programs that provides at-risk community members with connections, referrals, treatment, case management support, and information regarding behavioral health and other social determinants of health-related service. Say when you want to get it right, call on a woman. And Dr., this is my guy here. I believe in this guy because of what he's done and where he's been. The Reverend Dr. Jonathan Queen, who serves as an associate pastor and department head for the Children and Youth Ministry at First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, Maryland, under Senior Pastor John K. Jenkins. He's also the co-founder and director of New Minds Ministries and its Redeemed and Restored Reentry Groups. Reverend Jonathan Queen and his wife, Minister Linnea Queen, launched the New Minds Ministry Incorporated organization, a 503 nonprofit organization that provides education, mentoring, life skill, training, and resources for at-risk adults and youth. These three individuals are here to engage in conversation with you, and they're going to talk about. It's not that simple. Why is obtaining identification documents such an important issue? What can we do about it? What we need houses of worship to do, and what are our legislative dream to? We're not going to deal with all that at once. And as they talk, and you have a question, please hit your mic. You see a red light or to come on. And after you ask your question, hit your mic again. And Pastor Davis will probably get me on Sunday, but Pastor Davis, is it okay if I tell all these preachers and faith leaders that we don't want a sermonette, we want your questions? Mike, would you like to start?
With that being said, good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many faith leaders here to come out for this discussion. You know, the issue of returning citizens and supporting them is one that is near and dear to my heart. I think that the county and just the country has been remiss in not being able to create this infrastructure. And I'm so honored to be the first director of RCAD, and BJ and I, we've been toiling over the last year and a half to really build this infrastructure out. And one of the key partner groups that we identified early on was our faith-based community. And so this is awesome to have so many of you here, so many of you online. Thank you to all of those who are online and watching. But the issue of identification is one that seems like it would be an easy fix. It's just, can somebody pay for it? Like, why is it so difficult? We're trying to figure it out, right? And so we got men and women, some of whom have spent extraordinary amounts of time behind bars in state and federal facilities. They don't even know where to go. And they don't know, they don't have the $15 to get a non-driver's identification card or the $15 to get, excuse me, a birth certificate. They just don't have it, right? And so what we've been trying to do with the help of our partners at the Bridge Center, the Department of Health and the Bridge Center, with the help of our faith-based community, is to create an avenue where we kind of steer them towards getting the documentation they need. Why is it important? You can't do anything without it. You can't get a job. You know, just yesterday, I had to go down to the county's HR department and somehow redo my I-9 documentation verification. I'm sure all of you remember doing those, right? And I thought, well, what if I didn't have a passport? What if I didn't have a driver's license? But I couldn't do it. I couldn't work. And so I know that for our men and women who are coming home, this is something that is near and dear, that's very important to them. Many of the programs that they need to get into, you can't get into it because you can't verify who you are. When we talk about driver's licenses, You can't even get a driver's license if you don't have the basic documentation to do so. And so that's why this issue is so important. That's why we were glad when Reverend Folsom and the team came and approached us about having this conversation with our faith community. So yeah, so I'll stop there.
Good man. What about you? Comments?
Okay, absolutely. Thank you all for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be part of the health department. Part of my portfolio is the Bridge Center at Adams House. And we'll get into more about what we do there in the second question, but it's a one-stop shop for returning citizens. And so why is it not so simple to get an ID, even if we have the funds available? We had 531 people come through the Bridge Center over the last 3 months, and I have 5 counselors. So the demand for services just far exceeds our capacity. If we were to try to accompany every single person to the MBA and go through the appointment process in order to pay with the funds that we have available for this, it's just an impossible situation. So it's figuring out solutions to what seem like simple logistical barriers. And that's something that we're working on right now internally, and that we really rely on our partners right now to help supplement in accompanying our clients to places like the MBA to secure documents that are really necessary in order to, as Mike said, do anything else.
First of all, good afternoon. Super grateful for you all. You are truly answering the official call of Christ when he said, if you did this for the least of these, you did it for me. So grateful to be around such a room full of kingdom giants. But the reality is that there's so much going on that's fallen by the wayside, or that we are unaware of. A 14-year-old, he was 14 when he was convicted. He's now in his 40s, recently released. He wants to get an ID, but he needs a birth certificate, social security card. Wants to get the birth certificate, but he needs a social security card. Wants to get a social security card, but he needs the birth certificate. He was 14 when he went to prison and has none of them. So the difficulties around just walking that journey, the frustration that comes, and I can speak from experience. I was 23 when I was convicted, labeled a career criminal, and as a councilman said, I don't make any apologies, or I won't say I don't make apologies, I do apologize, but I don't make any excuses for what I've done in those early years of my criminality. But the reality is there were a lot of things I didn't know. And when you have someone who comes home, even if they're in their 40s, but their trauma is still when they were 14, frustration is going to lead to giving up. Yeah. I can't get this ID. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm going to the right place. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but it's not working out for me. So I'm gonna go back to what I know best. Our role is to become that community, that network, that big brother, big sister, that pastor, that friend that walks with them so that they don't give up. So we'll talk a lot about the technicalities of what is required. My part is to remind you of the heart that is required. If you sit at this table, somehow you've at least accepted the assignment that there are things that need to change in order for these returning citizens, who are really citizens regardless of their timeline of becoming acclimated back into society, need some help. You have to be the ones willing to help.
Are there any questions at this time?
What are the barriers that exist that would prevent us from having in some of our Maryland institutions an on-site DMV? Because we ought to know who's incarcerated and providing them either with some form of documentation or a non-driver's upon exit.
I'll take a stab at that. I think the barriers simply are there hasn't been an interest. the level of creativity and initiative that's needed to do that on a systemic level just hasn't been there. And so we see some efforts now, because this issue is not new. It's a old, long-standing issue. We see some issues at the state level. So our state, Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Service alone there, they've been working towards creating just what you're describing, so that the men and women who leave state custody have at least the beginnings of the documentation that they need. But they're just starting, right? And so we got more work to do. Locally, our own Department of Corrections, the detention facility in Upper Marlboro, they don't have that yet, right? So what they do when a person is released, they give them what's a temporary identification, and they send them over to the Bridge Center, and then they want the Bridge Center then starts the process of helping them to get the official identification. I think part of the challenges, and that Reverend Queen said this, and I don't want this to get glossed over. We're seeing a large number of individuals who went to prison as juveniles, 14 and 15. This is not a criticism, this is a fact. Maryland, the state of Maryland, incarcerates more juveniles as adults than almost any other state in the country. So we have a number of kids who went into prison, and now they're in their 40s and sometimes 50s, coming home, and we think that they can just come home and navigate all of these systems to get the documentation they need, and that's just not the case. And so some of the barriers, they're inherent to our bureaucracies, and some just because we just haven't had the will and the creativity to pull it off.
Before I call on you, Reverend Chris, could you say your name and what church you're representing? And when you speak, turn on your mic, and please, I failed to tell you, just announce who you are and what institution you're representing.
Mr. Chris Matisse, Pastor Hemingway Memorial in District Heights, Maryland. Thank you for that. And if there's a way that we as a group can bring the advocacy that is needed to push such policies, or even a pilot right here in Prince George's County, we would definitely support.
That's awesome, sir.
So Ralph Miller with Ebenezer AME Church, and I actually have oversight of a ministry called Beyond the Walls Ministry, which we do address returning citizens to the community and try to give them proactive resources that will make them successful. So one of the things that I didn't hear you mention is, in getting each one of those IDs, you have to produce 2 forms of mail as well in order to be able to even ask for those documents. And most people are just coming out, they don't have an address. Now, Mr. Williams and I, we were on a call recently, and he did share that I believe Adams House will allow for you to use that address to be able to receive mail, correct? So I think that from a process perspective, it would be great to know, because I just learned that, and I've been working with Beyond the Walls now for about 8 years. But I just learned that for the first time, that we can use Adams House. And I know Brother Hall and others, because I'm on the reentry roundtable as well as the reentry court for Prince George's County. And so what happens is, as we get people that are referred to us or come to our church, it'd be nice to be able to have kind of a resource center that we could go to, because I believe that most of us in this room would be willing to even escort them in. Most churches will even pay for, well, I shouldn't say most, but I believe some churches would be willing to pay for a lot of the documentation, but we have to understand what those numbers look like, what we need to provide to them, and how we can help them be successful as they transition back to the streets.
Thank you. You all want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I appreciate it. That was another part of the cycle where, you know, I have to have an address, but I haven't got out yet, and I can't get the address. But I think just to add to that, the awareness is important, as Brother Mike alluded to. There are different levels of support that come. So when you're in a local jail versus a state prison versus a federal institution, there are different things that are provided in regards to your reentry. And the thing that happens with us is, as a faith-based community, is just being aware that even though this person coming from the local prison doesn't know, we as a church, we as a reentry group within our church, or a ministry, a prison ministry, we know the things that are available. So just as you mentioned with Adams House, I believe most transitional houses allow you to use the address. So that's another avenue that we have to start supporting when you look at the Denny House, the Damascus House, Jude House, Shepherd House, starting to make sure that we are in relationship with the organizations that can provide that help and support.
For Dr. Queen and Mr. Williams, one thing that came out of just this brief discussion is perhaps coming up with an updated informational sheet that you can get to the faith-based and all the organizations you named, Dr. Queen, so that they know about what's going on. You know, we have Sergeant Goss in here from the Prince George's County Police Department. He's been out quietly. You see him at events working with returning citizens. And in his unique role as a law enforcement officer, anything you want to add to our conversation, sir?
Sure. Again, I am Sergeant Rodney Goss with Prince George's County Police. Coming up on my 7th year of service. I don't lost count. Been such a long time. But I was assigned as a faith-based liaison from under the Office of Chief Malik Aziz. I have been at this position for about 2 years. And that does allow me to crisscross the county and connect with all the faiths, any type of partnerships and groups that we want to get together and partner with the police department. And about a year and a half ago, Chief Aziz pushed in front of me a flyer that had all the returning citizen programs that were going on. It was the job fairs and the different meetings and things. And from that point, I knew that he wanted me to be involved with returning citizens. So I made it my mission to make as many of the meetings and discussion groups and things that are taking place so the department can be better educated on returning citizens. From the Office of Chief Malik Aziz, he definitely supports returning citizens. We want all that are coming out to be law-abiding citizens, to get all the skills that they need, get the resources that they need to be productive. We understand as a county we have enough to deal with in crime and things of that nature. And so we definitely strongly support what the returning citizen programs, nonprofit and the county-based programs are doing to help returning citizens. And I'm glad to be a part of this discussion today.
But I did want to add one, I'm sorry, Mike. The one thing I wanted to add was when we talk about this network of faith-based leaders, this is a part of what BJ and I have been calling our reentry ecosystem, because the government can't solve all these problems, right? And so it's really important to bring both our public and private organizations together within the county so that we can begin to act like a village where we identify a challenge and then we work together to find and develop solutions to the challenges that we identify.
I have a question. Would it be legal for returning citizens to establish, or the county establish, a virtual mailbox for returning citizens? And that mailbox could be located in a county-owned building and have someone facilitate their process just to have the address, the physical address. Because I have one for my own business, but you know, I rarely go because I'm not getting any mail. But anyway, but would that be enough to substantiate that process for establishing an address so that you know you can go to the next level, even though you're not living there? You can have the address to move from point A to point B, you know, to get an ID at the library, get the photo. You got to start somewhere.
Before any of them answer, good friend, could you announce who you are and who you representing?
My name is Rick Barnett, and I serve in the social justice ministry at the Shepherd's House.
Thank you much. Anything you'd like to respond?
So we do have, returning citizens can use the address, the physical address of the Bridge Center as an address. So we do have that capacity, and we receive mail and we'll hold it for 6 months too. So any Bridge Center client, and I don't think you have to be a client either to use the address, can use that address and have mail sent there and held.
Pastor Jonathan Davis, St. Mark Avery Church. Would it be beneficial, as Councilman Hawkins stated, if we had all of the information that you have, like I said, a resource guide, either online or a pamphlet or something like that, in all of our churches, not just as churches represented here, but as different faith-based organizations. Or if we had access to that, then we could help walk people through. Because sometimes one of the things that they've presented for about 15 years in Western Maryland, the stigma of just talking to people that they don't know, and sometimes that particular church that's just their connection because that's the pastor that they saw, that's the group that they saw visit them while they were incarcerated. But having that information would be tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of a sort of how-to flyer that we can share with all of our partners, and really welcome ideas. I know this meeting is specifically on identification, but really welcome ideas on other flyers that would be helpful. We definitely don't want to be gatekeepers of information. We don't have capacity. We rely on our partners to support this community. And so any additional information that we can share out, sometimes it's hard to know what you need when it's already, for me anyway, in my head. So any guidance there is always appreciated. But yeah, I love the idea of a how-to flyer for this topic specifically.
So real quick, just to that question, I think it's a great question, Reverend Davis. When BJ and I came on board, we got access to a number of resource guides. And some of them were small, little pamphlets. Some of them were huge documents. The challenge is we came on board right after the pandemic. Many of those resources aren't any good anymore. And so, again, it's just the two of us. We haven't had the manpower to go through and verify who's still operating, because we lost a lot of nonprofit capacity in the county as a result of COVID. So that is on our to-do list, which is to update a resource guide that we can share with our faith partners, with our nonprofit partners, everybody who's involved in this work. But it's been, we hate to refer someone somewhere and then they go and the lights out, right? Then that's frustrating. Then that's when, as Reverend Quinn said, people say, "Oh, I'm forget it. I'm go back to what I know." And so we don't want that. So give us some time. We are working to getting that together.
So another question. My name is Rick Barnett. So what are the steps for someone getting out? What are the steps that he has to take if he doesn't have ID and no family? So how do we communicate to that individual as far as the steps that he needs to take?
So just kind of rewinding back to the previous question and adding this one in as well. Real quick pop quiz, what's the strongest form of promotion? Anybody know? Still the strongest form, regardless how big your church is, no matter how much media money you have, word of mouth is still the strongest form of promotion for anything. One of the things is Mike alluded to, there's organizations that are no longer in, they're no longer doing what they set out to do. One of the things that we do at the Redeemed and Restored group that meets on Thursday nights is we have people there sharing the information that has already worked for them. So for churches, I challenge you to not just look at it as, let me have this pamphlet, or let me have this one sheet, or this flyer, or whatever it is, even if it's an online thing, but let me have a community, whether it's my prison ministry that is now extended to provide reentry services, whether it's a social justice ministry that now welcomes returning citizens. But as a church, if you create a space that's safe enough for individuals who are returning, when they meet together, that word of mouth of, hey, I was able to get, a bus pass to help me get from A to B, or I was able to get this and that from this organization. Oh, well, hey, did you go to the Bridge Center at Adams House? Because they let you use their address. Somebody just sent me a text saying that they now have a reentry coordinator at the Department of Motor Vehicles, so that people who are struggling to get IDs actually have somebody there working specifically with them that didn't come from a pamphlet or a sheet. But don't get me wrong, we have at our meetings a form that everybody gets, but I'm telling you, the strongest communication that happens is when other people who have experienced the success or even the failures are sharing with each other. Now, in regards to your second question, it depends on the person, the situation. Some people come from locations where case management and behavioral support and health support have allowed them to be prepared for returning. And then some people are just cut loose and they're fending for their own. But the beautiful part is that if they can get with somebody that can point them to where there's help and support at, that's when it becomes a blessing for them.
Hey, Jonathan, that was a good point. Nina, Michael, and Jonathan, are there any other ideas you can share with the group about what they could be doing? And although no one brought it up, what is one of the biggest challenges returning citizens experience is housing? And any feedback on housing and the challenges you all know about?
So I knew somebody was gonna ask that question. I didn't think it'd be. Housing has, that is the biggest challenge that we have to provide support for our returning citizens. We have limited capacity of transitional houses within the county. When I say limited, I mean there are like 3 or 4 facilities. They probably house about 10 each. But we have hundreds of men and women coming home from the state facility, federal facilities, our local detention facility. And I was in a meeting recently with my counterparts from the District of Columbia who shared with me that many of the men and women who were sentenced under DC code and spent time serving time for the District of Columbia, when they do their home plans, where they coming? They come to Prince George's County. They're coming right here because the district has priced them out. And so their families are no longer living in the district. Families are living in Prince George's County. And so the district is not going to provide them services. That's going to be on us. That's going to be on Prince George's County. And so one of the hardest things to do is even to get a hold of what the number is. And I can't even, and I've been working on, I was communicating with our Department of Corrections today about who's getting released from the detention center. And so we started out saying, well, we got this number of sentenced people getting released from the detention center, but then we have a whole population of people who have served time at the jail in a pretrial posture and who are now being released. Well, they're returning citizens. They've been in prison. They've been in jail for the last 6 months. So getting a handle on the population is still a challenge. So in terms of the housing issue, that is something I'm in conversation with a number of groups, both public and private, to figure out what we can do. I think that may be our next Brunch and Learn, that we focus on housing. But in that one, I'm going to come kind of hat in hand asking you for your suggestions. And it will be one where we just take a lot of notes and we get ideas, we brainstorm ideas on what we can do. Because I don't think that there's an easy answer. There's no short answer. I know the Reentry Advisory Board, the group that Councilman Hawkins led, they talked about this. That was one of the recommendations that came out. There were, for those who don't know, it's on our website. There were 47 detailed recommendations that came out of that report. The housing one was one that we've been trying to wrap our minds around. And so we're going to be really reaching out to folks like this group to start to brainstorm how we address this and as a community, how we address it.
We address not in my backyard.
That's a whole different, but that again, our faith leaders need to lead the charge in that, absolutely.
So let me add, you said you want to wait to bring hat in hand. I'm looking for a hat now. I'm going to bring the hat out right now. And listen, I went to Cumberland a few months ago and I went to Jessup. And, we go into the prisons and, the ultimate goal is to bring hope. Most of you as pastors, you send your leaders, you go yourselves, you praise and worship, you pray with the men and women and, you let them know that God is still for them and all of that. But I'm running into men who are from Prince George's County who have done their time, but can't come home. They don't have an address and there's no facilities available to take them. And then when they do get an opening, it's for them to go to Baltimore. But they're from PG and I'm allowed to say PG. Prince George's, I'm sorry. From Pennsylvania, forgive me. Right? Sorry. Please. The reality is that there's a need. And a lot of us from the faith-based posture, we haven't been meeting the need in the way that we really could. So when you really start talking about what does the next level of your prison ministry, because most of you I know will not have the title reentry ministry in there yet, but prison ministry has by extension reentry because 98% of them are coming home. And so if there's anything that you can do to take, whether it's the housing, we didn't even start talking about the health, you know, the ID, of course, but whatever you can do as a church, and don't get me wrong, I mean, some of us we're doing all we can with what we can, but pray. The Bible is very clear that God hears our prayers. So even if it's just praying and partnering with other churches, I'll tell you one thing that makes a returning citizen frustrated is to fall in love with Jesus in prison and come home to a church that tries to choke Jesus out of you. That's right. Or doesn't make it safe enough for you to even share. I met a guy who was in prison with me in the hallway of First Baptist Church at Glen Island. It's an amazing church. He's serving in a ministry. I'm the new youth pastor. I meet him in the hall, I embrace him, I give him a hug, and he whispers in my ear and says, "Don't tell them where we met each other." If you're in a church where it's still a stigma for you to acknowledge that you were in prison and not share the testimony of what God has done for you to be home, for you to be able to survive, you really need to challenge yourself then. I'm sorry, that's all I was going to say. My fault. I'm sorry.
So if I can maybe jump in real quick on that, because housing is one of the biggest problems that we have, because you can't get addressed if you can't get a house or some of the thing. And there's rules, regulations, restrictions for some returning citizens to even get into certain complexes, right? But there's no halfway houses in Prince George's County either. So there's not even a transition plan. And as my brother stated, if you're from Prince George's County, and trust me, if you go through the feds, if you go through DC, you go through the fed process, but the majority of the people are coming back to Prince George's County because that's where they live, that's where their families are. And if we don't have resources to be able to allow them, and I heard one say that, let there be a meeting where it has anything to do with schools or anything else and people don't show up for it. But let there be a meeting that's around a halfway house coming to your community and everybody shows up for it, right? But they want to stop it. So what we have to have, Brother Hawkins, is we have to have the support of Prince George's County also to be able to insist that there are areas and or housing programs that allow for a halfway house type of scenario.
Hi, Matt. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Frederica Brooks Davis. I'm the founder and executive director of the Restoration Center. So I just want to suggest also, and I'm sorry because I do have to leave, as we talk about, I used to volunteer in the prisons down in Virginia, and I worked in juvenile justice. And one of the things we still know is that we aren't necessarily preparing our returning citizens and the families before they go home. So we talked today about tangible things such as ID, and we've used the word home. But from a psychological perspective, oftentimes our returning citizens are stuck in a time warp. So when they are incarcerated at 15, when they get home and if they had a child, oftentimes they believe home is going to be what it was when they left. So I just think as we talk about preparing them for a physical home, that if we can from a mental and emotional perspective, if there's a way we can, and you may already be doing this, but I think we can integrate the emotional, psychological with the spiritual, and churches look at offering that in addition to the physical home, and what to look for. If you're able to engage that through your ministries before they come home, then some of the disappointment and frustration, we can kind of mitigate that. And give them the tools they need before they return to the physical home would be a suggestion as you're thinking about the physical home. Because some people can't come home, not that there isn't a physical home, is that family doesn't want them there because they have moved on. But the returning citizens aren't ready for that. And you can talk to them about that while they're incarcerated. They don't want to hear it because that has been their survival. What they've used. And so if you remove that from them, it causes more harm with them and then their relationship with God. So maybe kind of integrating all of that together.
It was great to hear that from you and from that part of Carolina where you're from. Reverend Barber speaks about preparing the breach, and I know you have to leave, and we were going to get into some legislative initiatives, and hopefully we can count on you to take the lead in the area you just spoke on and helping Mr. Williams and Mr. BJ Page coordinate, collaborate, and organize around that, because you make some very good points.
I also want to respond to that directly. The health department was just awarded a SAMHSA grant for pre-release planning as part of an addition to our existing work at the Bridge Center. So we are developing an MOU with DOC, with Department of Corrections right now, and we will launch early next calendar year.
That's huge.
She's leaving, but you should get her information and maybe she can give you some insight on that grant you all have received.
Absolutely. And I was going to touch on the housing piece also, and also returning citizens from other places. We're actually, the Bridge Center is in Hagerstown right now at a reentry fair, and I don't remember the facility name there, but exactly what we're seeing, so many individuals coming to Prince George's County who are returning home. And so it's been a challenge and something that we're addressing. With the housing piece, a lot of our clients are not necessarily interested in transitional housing. So that's another challenge that we're facing. Transitional housing is great, capacity is low, but even if there is space, a lot of our clients are looking for low-income housing, which is just extremely rare. Many times we're pointing them outside of the county, but the catch-22 there is we can only serve Prince George's County residents. So as soon as they leave, we're no longer able to help them at the Bridge Center. So not to pass it, but what I will say is in a different meeting, I wrote down a note, private network, faith-based housing network. And so it's funny, coincidental being in this group today and thinking about what our next topic would be, but it's coming up in other conversations across the county that relying and leaning on our faith-based network to help us in areas where we're not direct service providers and make that a mutually beneficial relationship is coming up a lot.
I think the other piece, just to add to that, like, there are conversations going on with entities throughout the county. I'm meeting tomorrow actually with representatives from the Housing Authority about set-asides for returning citizens. Now, we don't know where that's going to go, but that we're having the conversation is huge because we haven't talked about, well, there has been no productive conversation about having housing vouchers specifically set aside for returning citizens. This is new, this is innovative. There's some grant money at the federal level that we're looking to pursue so that we can, again, begin to be creative. We're gonna have to do some things that we haven't ever done before in order to resolve problems that we've just allowed to kind of linger on. And we are headed to a very vital point here with the number of returning citizens who are coming back to the county, who don't have a place to stay, who don't have the wherewithal to get the documentation that they need, and really just are in need of assistance from the community, the non-faith-based community in particular. So I want you guys to know that there is work happening. One of the other challenges, and we talked about this, Reverend Neal, was that the county Department of Corrections has I think it's a 75-bed reentry center on the right outside the detention center. They're ready to open. They are ready. We can't staff the place because we can't get qualified people to apply for and get hired. We went into an MOU with the State Department of Corrections so that men and women who are at the state facilities can transition back to the county through this community release center. But we're having a real hard time staffing it. And so once we get that staff, that increases our capacity to do the type of program that was just mentioned in terms of the family reunification, which is huge for all of us who are doing this work. And so again, I just wanted to share some of the things that are happening in the county.
Are there any burning questions or comments? We are at the last part of this the last 10 minutes of this panel discussion. Before I turn it to the panelists to close out, Do any of you have anything you want to ask, you want to say in the last 2 minutes? Because we are very appreciative of your presence and we're grateful for your time.
Pastor Chris Natisa, just a follow-up to Mr. Williams. How do we get the information about those jobs that you're trying to fill? So, well, not necessarily you specifically, but
well, these were like case manager jobs at the Department of Corrections. They were posted on the county's website as openings. If we can get a sign-in sheet, or I can go through Reverend Folsom. When they come open again, we'll get them back through the network. We'll make sure we put them up.
They close.
I think they're closed now.
Just real quick, Reverend Vernon Ware, the pastor of Faith AME in Laurel, Maryland. And one of the things that would be helpful, I think sometimes even for the churches, is to be able to start that process of changing not only the narrative, but even some of the mindsets. And so some of that does start with language. So even the returning citizen and things like that, I think that even if there was something, a frequently asked question, something simple that we could go to, don't say this, say that, don't say that. And I think that would be helpful. But even for some of the smaller churches that might look and say, okay, we can't build a facility tomorrow, but we could make sure that every year in our budget, we put aside $5,000 that goes to help someone. So I think being able to look at it not only in terms of the big solutions of persons who can handle all of it, but somebody that says we might not be able to build the building, but we can take care of a returning citizen for a year, and we can make sure that we set aside that money to do that. So I think being able to have language would be helpful, and then multiple points of entry for persons to be able to support.
Other, or just BJ?
I do want to just add, one of the biggest pieces of these type of conversations where we're learning the work that's already been done, or we're learning new language and things of that nature, is the ecosystem that is being built from ARCAD, Returning Citizens Affairs Division, is going to only help everything that you've already done. So let's just make sure that we continue to give input, and the next one and the next one, so our team up front can really have some marching orders as we leave. I'm just thankful, and I know that everybody's probably got their wheels spinning, and I just wanted to say that keep coming, and we'll be able to continue to work.
Online, we have someone, Ms. Gant, that asked the question, how could they connect with the support and resources available? Is it an email or a contact number one of you could give?
Yeah, absolutely. The Bridge Center, well, if you're online, you might not have a handout. Information is on the notes page here. The director of the Bridge Center, Dr. Sherelle Wiggum, her email is swiggham@co.pg.md.us. She's our director. If you're interested in being a partner, please reach out to her. And our main phone number there is 301-817-1900. And we accept walk-ins, referrals, appointments. So if you call and give us a little lead time, we can get you assigned and an appointment time to get set up.
Thank you for that. Also, everyone, we have Samantha Howard, who's the Hispanic liaison for the county exec here with us. Samantha, would you like to introduce yourself? And she's also a resource for you.
Good evening, everyone. My name, like you said, is Samantha Howard, and I'm the Latino Affairs Liaison within the Office of the County Executive. I'm really excited to be here. It is my hope to be able to engage Hispanic and Latino faith-based leaders within the county and possibly double the amount of hands here for this work here. The diversity and inclusion piece is really important to me, as it is to the county executive. So being able to bring many hands, right, and hopefully make light work of what you're doing here today. So thank you to Dorothea for inviting me, and thank you for having me here for this conversation. It's been really insightful. So I hope to be able to contribute in the future in the coming sessions.
Thank all of you. Thank our panelists for their comments and input. And at this time, as we close out, ask Barbara Hope Streeter.
I do want to add that if you do not have a returning citizen at your table, I need you to look at this table and think twice about how critical, how important that could be. You just heard our illustrious council at large talk about his past. Myself, of course, the VJ. He did a lot of time too. It's just he was on the other side, but he was there. But the reality is that they used to use the term ex-offender rather than returning citizen. And I kind of like that term because in reality, we all are ex-offenders. Yeah. We've all offended somebody at some time. So I would encourage you to find an ex-offender who has been redeemed and restored and would like to give back to their community and allow them to sit at your table and start giving you insight on how it can be done in a great way. Amen.
Great. I forgot to say to all of you, the county executive, someone mentioned that she put this program in place, the office in place. And I want you all to say, you see the Christians when no one's around, how their character is. And when we talked about this with the county executive, she never hesitated because she said it was morally right. And I wanted to publicly thank her for her moral stance on this very important office.
What an afternoon of conversation. What an afternoon for us to learn and listen and hear from one another. And so I just want to do a quick wrap up. I serve as the Director of Strategic Partnerships here with the Office of the County Executive, as well as the Chair of the Faith Advisory Council. So without a shadow of doubt, we have to be able to say again, thank you to our county executive. I'm so excited about the work that she is allowing us to do to support this county and the citizens. And we could not have done it without the support for this event, our launch event of Brunch and Learn, without our sponsor. And that is Pastor Kevin Matthews. I want to give him a our Faith Advisory Council. He is a humble man. Some of you all may know him, or you may just have heard his voice because it sounds like he should be on the radio. Walking out the door, he said, I'll do it. I didn't even get a chance to say how much. He said, whatever you need, I'll do it. Amen. That's exactly what we need in this room. Whatever the ask is, say, I'm here to help. And so I do want to share that to say thank you to our Faith Advisory Council members. And the ones who are here, if you all could be so kind to stand so we can see you all. Behind the scenes, our council is growing to do amazing things and continuing to do those. And the Returning Citizens Affairs, it's a mighty men of two. mighty men of two, but they have great passion, and that's exactly what we need. So again, thank you, the two of you making great work in what we're doing. And our moderator, we couldn't have done this without the moderator. And who loves to hear a good story? But a good story is a testimony. So because of your test and your testimony, you have gone through so many trials, and look at the triumphs on the other side. Where's Pastor Jenkins with those teams? He wants to say, thank you so much, the Honorable Councilman Calvin Hawkins, and our panelists, Michael Williams, Nina Ward, and Reverend Dr. Queen. When I say thank yous, we cannot do all that we do without the leadership. And one of the leaders is Sonia Wilburn Rice, the Director of Stakeholder Engagement. Has an eye to do and make things look great. And so we thank you for that. And Gerald Folsom, Reverend Gerald Folsom, our religious liaison. But today is exactly where he wants to be and where to be and to do the great work. Now, let me take another step. What's next? What's next? Like I said, we had a lot of great conversation. So I talk about connecting communication. Now, I say this a lot, speed dial. You should have certain people on your speed dial, on your phone that you call, just like 911, or your mama, your daddy, your pastor. Everybody in this room, you should have on speed dial. Because at any given time, you need to have and work with a returning citizen, you need to know who to call. And you know, and what role that they can focus in. Our local churches, all of you all represent different churches. Some of you all have a returning citizens ministry, some of you all do not. Work in collaboration together. We have over 700, close to 1,000 churches in Prince George's County. That doesn't mean every single church needs to have a returning citizen ministry, right? You can collaborate with another church so you can make even stronger impact in the community. Know who your neighbors are. The health department, the Bridge Center in Adams House. The first thing she said, Nina said, over 530 people. And I had to ask Reverend Bobby, say that number again? 530 people in the last few months. She can't do all this by herself. So here's the thing. If you cannot open up your own returning citizen ministry, do you accept volunteers, Miss Nina? Always. Okay, Miss Nina said she needs some volunteers. So here you go. You can do the impact and the work in the community by helping and supporting. Returning Citizens Affairs Division, Dr. Michael BJ, do y'all need any help?
Every day.
No, really. So we're raising them every day. So how many churches, if you don't represent a church in here, raise your hand. Wow, we got a room full. And the people online, raise your hand. Okay. So now all of you all need to decide how you want to support our returning citizens. You do it in different ways that can impact. And I know we can do that. And that means our connection. The police department, raise your hand over there. Okay, he said he's all around the community, the county. He can't do this by himself. Just like we need to be the eyes and ears of county executive, we need to be the eyes and ears of the police department. And then lastly, my department, the strategic partnerships department. So each of you all should have a flyer. This is our nonprofit symposium. I heard a lot of things about grants and funding. That's what I thought I heard. Well, on November the 1st, if you want a little bit of money that can help your nonprofit, you should be in the room. We're going to talk about over $15 million that is going to represent the county, state, and federal grant opportunities. So when you say that, I don't know when it's here to help and support, you can't make any more excuses. November the 1st, this is a free event. We're going to feed your soul and your stomach. That's free breakfast and lunch and a refreshment and a network reception. And this is a free event. Go online. We just posted this last week. I think it was last week. We have over 100 people already registered. Wow. So that means it's a need to make sure we support our nonprofits. You all are the foundation, the faith organization, the foundation of what we do. So our goal is to reach 300, but I'm pretty sure we're going to surpass that and be able to provide that information. And lastly, I heard a how-to resource guide, right? And so those individuals here are probably going to need some help to put that information together. We can not only count on Miss Nina and Return Citizens Affairs to do the work, because each one of us have a point of contact somewhere that can be part of this resource guide. So let's stay together and help us help our returning citizens through IDs and housing. And last but not least, many of us have great vision. We're leaders, right? So we have great ideas and we know how to execute things. But sometimes we need people to help us execute to the next level. And then sometimes it's only a person that really does a lot of the things behind the scenes. How many of you all ever hosted an event, from a birthday party to a church anniversary? It's a lot of work, right? And you see, sometimes the person in the behind the scenes, you don't even get to see them. But today I want to make sure on behalf of the Faith Advisory Council and the Returning Citizens Affairs, we want the person who's been behind the scenes, who got all the information together, that's Mr. Rite Burton, to come over.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you can receive them now. We want to tell you we love you. We appreciate you. Those late night hours were never, never unseen. Your labor is not in vain. God has given you a spirit to serve and given you an opportunity. And watch so many doors open up. So we thank you so much. Thanks. We'll end with our closing prayer. And no, we will not. One moment, please. Yes. Okay, hold on one moment, please. So, before we do a closing prayer, do we have any singers in the house? Who's a singer? So really, all of these church people, no one can sing? I got a phone. You got a phone? Oh, wait a minute, somebody put a hand over. Who can? You can't, okay. All right, so I'm gonna try, but I'm gonna need you all to join with me because it's a day of celebration. We are celebrating a birthday. We are celebrating 3 birthdays. The first one is the Honorable Calvin Hawkins' birthday. Dwight's birthday. Dwight and David. So kind to come over in the middle, please.
Come in for your cake, Calvin. Slice.
And we have someone else? Okay.
We're just gonna take a picture real quick.
Where's the Honorable Calvin Hawkins? Yes, sir. We need you to make your way over, please.
Just trying to find a bigger plate.
All right, and we're going to sing. Are we taking the photo first or? Take the photo. Take the photo.
Right here. Get next to, get a little closer to me.
Oh, look at that.
Cake is the right color.
Right here.
Look towards Miss Daphne for the photo in the green. And then Mr. BJ taking the photo. And last is Miss Letitia, our new administrative assistant with strategic partnerships. All right. All right, and we have one more birthday, Miss Sonia?
Yeah, one more. Juanita introduced the birthday for this one as well.
Well, we share a birthday.
Okay, so Juanita and, I'm sorry, Reverend Tia's birthday is October the 19th.
Wonderful. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We officially close this amazing event with a closing prayer. We have to get all the pastors and preachers to have a seat. So kindly make your way over. As we're doing that, we'll have Pastor Henry Davis from First Baptist Church of Highland Park make his way up. He also serves on our Faith Advisory Council and is a wonderful partner and also a good friend of mine as well.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for the subjects that we've been able to cover. And we pray, dear God, for the impact we can make on the lives of returning citizens. And we thank you for the input given. And we're even praying for doors to open, donors to come, and those who will help us as we seek to secure our future. And we pray this prayer In the victorious name of Jesus. Amen.
So